You know that feeling when payday hits, right? And by the end of the month, the numbers just still aren't adding up. It's not making any sense. The budgeting sounds simple, but sticking to it, that is another story. Like, that is beyond willpower. So today in this video, I'm going to be exploring the psychology and cognitive neuroscience behind money habits, boundaries, and how to build a budget we can actually stick to. One that actually supports how our brain naturally makes decisions instead of constantly working against it. Hi, I'm Leona. If you're new here, I studied psychology, cognitive neuroscience, and public health. And on this channel, I basically share science-backed well-being content to help you thrive emotionally, physically, and financially. Let's get into the video. So let's just acknowledge that most of us have tried budgeting at some point and still end up wondering, hold on, where did all my money go? It's not because we're bad with money, honestly, it's not. It's because most budgets are set up in a way that just doesn't actually work with how our brains are wired. The brain just doesn't like restriction, especially when it's vague or disconnected from real life rewards. So the orbital frontal cortex, which is the part that basically weighs pleasure and value, will often override logic if a short-term reward feels closer than the long-term one. So that's why spend less never really sticks. It feels like a punishment. Psychologically, this is called temporal discounting, right? So we tend to prioritize smaller immediate rewards over bigger future ones. So we'll end up spending like £20 here and £30 there because the gain is instant, even if it messes with our long-term goals. So what could help here is pretty much just making it more personal. So instead of just calling it a budget, frame it around what actually excites you. Like, actually start labeling your spending categories in a way that reflects your lifestyle. So it could be like weekend treats or future home fund, right? So giving your money purpose makes the process more rewarding. Away from this point that budgets don't always fail because we lack discipline. Sometimes they fall apart because they just feel like a chore. It's not actually what we want to do. So let's say we've set a budget, but somehow, regardless, we keep overspending. That might generally be because the boundaries are just too vague. Behavioral psychology shows that when we pair a habit with a specific cue, it becomes easier to follow through. It's called situational anchoring, where pretty much linking a behavior to a place, time, or routine helps make it stick. So the brain loves clear instructions. Neuroscience backs this too. The dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the part that handles self-control and planning, activates more when we picture exact scenarios. If we were to prep ahead, our brain starts rehearsing the right response. So instead of saying something like, oh, don't spend too much on weekends, you can try saying something like, oh, if I'm going out, I'll move X amount to my weekend debit card before I leave. And also make it personal, right? So maybe it's no spending after 8 p.m. or maybe it's giving yourself a 24-hour pause rule before you spend anything over £50. The key is whatever you decide, just make it yours. Boundaries can be boring. Honestly, they can. When they're specific, they make sticking to a budget way more easier. And saying that, don't micromanage every penny. Here's something no one really tells you. Budgeting doesn't mean tracking every single transaction. In fact, that level of micromanagement can just backfire. It really can. And it's too much. Psychologically, it creates what's known as decision fatigue. So more decisions we force ourselves to make, the more our self-control wears down throughout the day. That's why obsessively logging every £2 purchase can feel draining over time. So the anterior cingulate cortex, the part that handles error detection and emotional regulation, can become overactivated when we feel like we're constantly failing small financial goals. This creates stress, not freedom. So a more sustainable approach is grouping your money into flexible spending categories, right? So have a broad food and fun budget for the week and track the total, not the tiny details. You'll still feel in control, but without the pressure of perfection. So budgeting shouldn't feel like punishment. It should feel like clear, steady, and less emotional reactivity around money. So our brain responds to visual cues more strongly than abstract numbers. That's why visual cues like charts or even save and progress bars can actually shift how we spend. The visual cortex communicates closely with the reward system, especially the ventral striatum. When we see progress, even in a simple way, it boosts dopamine and makes the reward feel a lot more tangible. Okay, so let's use this example. You're saving for a trip, right? Placing a photo of like your destination in your wallet or on your like phone lock screen and subconsciously redirects impulse spending. And it just helps, like seeing that, you just get a little reminder which reminds you, actually, this is what we're like budgeting towards or saving towards. You can also use visual cues, right, like keeping credit cards out of sight, or even switching to cash for certain like payments. These just help disrupt automatic behaviors. So sometimes it's not about more control, it's about smarter cues. What we see consistently, we start to prioritize. So if we don't know why we're even budgeting, right, it's really hard to stay motivated, especially when life gets busy. So psychologists talk about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is doing something because it aligns with our values. It's way more sustainable than doing it just because we should. So instead of budgeting out of guilt or pressure, we can ask, hold on, what does financial freedom really mean to me? Maybe it's travel, maybe it's helping your parents, maybe it's just feeling secure. But when we link budgeting to something personal and emotionally meaningful, it activates the brain's medial prefrontal cortex, right, which is the part involved in identity and self-reflection. Pretty much that deeper purpose just keeps us engaged when the hype just wears off. So try journaling about your why and your value around money once a month. It sounds simple, but it helps ground your habits into like real value. There's something to remember is that money goals stick when they're rooted in meaning. The deeper the reason, the stronger the follow through. The money stuff can just feel a bit heavy sometimes, and doing it alone makes it even harder. There's a reason researchers have found that accountability increases follow through. So when we say goals out loud or share progress with someone we trust, we're more likely to stay consistent. So instead of making budgeting this boring solo admin task, right, turn it into a routine. So maybe put on a podcast and do a Sunday money reset, or you could do it with a friend. So both of you could be on FaceTime doing your budgets for the week. It's not just about structure, it's about actually softening the experience and making money feel less lonely. So yeah, less overwhelming and just more human. The budgeting doesn't have to be a boring thing you do. Making it part of a routine that still feels good is something that can make budgeting a lot more sustainable. Okay, so sometimes we think budgeting means cutting all the fun, but that actually makes us more likely to fail faster. That is so true. Honestly, research has shown when we chronically deprive ourselves, okay, that's a bit of a stretch, but you know what I mean. We activate the amygdala, which is the brain's emotional alarm system. That emotional load can lead to a binge spending form of relief or rebellion. So psychologically, this links to something called the abstinence violation effect, where one slip makes us feel like we failed completely. So we abandon the plan altogether. So instead, build joy into the budget, right? Set aside money for things that actually make you feel full. So whether that's a dinner out with the girls, you want to learn something new, or your favorite items, right? These are not luxuries. They're part of what keeps us consistent. Honestly, like budgeting isn't just about bills. It's about designing a life that we love, and that includes joy. Okay, so take this from this point. The most powerful budget isn't just strict, it's balanced. Make space for joy and the discipline becomes doable. Budgeting also becomes easier when we understand money more deeply. But learning about finances can feel overwhelming, I get it. But if we try to do it all at once, psychologically, we process information better in small, consistent doses. So this taps into the spacing effect. So in psychology, it's basically a memory principle that shows we retain more when we spread learning over time rather than cramming it in. So instead of trying to become a financial expert overnight, choose one area to focus on each month. So maybe it's how credit scores work, or how to invest, or what pensions actually mean. You could even set a simple goal like watch one video a week, something credible. And that compound effect of that habit is powerful, and you start to feel more confident with every single step. And let's remember this, financial confidence isn't about knowing everything. It's about learning just enough to take your next right step. Okay, so life shifts, and so should your budget. One of the biggest reasons people abandon their financial plans is because they expect themselves to be perfect. Cognitive psychology reminds us that mental flexibility, the ability to adapt plans based on new information, is tied to long-term well-being. So those who are more adaptable basically show stronger emotional regulation and bounce back faster from setbacks, for example. So let's say a surprise cost comes up or your income shifts. The budget shouldn't make you feel guilty. It should basically help you recalibrate. So revisit it monthly, right? Make tweaks, move things around sound. Your budget isn't a test to pass. It's not. It's a tool to support your life as it evolves. So a flexible budget is a resilient one, right? Let it grow with you and not hold you back. So there's something so powerful that happens when you start teaching what you're learning. It not only reinforces your own habits, but it also centers meaning. So psychologists call this the helper's high. It's a feeling of fulfillment that comes from giving time, knowledge, or support to others. It literally activates the brain's reward system, especially areas linked to empathy and connection. So if budgeting is something you've been working on, honestly, consider sharing a simple tip with a friend or family member, helping someone set up their first track, or just even opening a conversation about money without any shame. You don't have to be an expert. Honestly, you don't. You just need to be willing, and sometimes showing up with honesty helps others more than you even know. Money honestly can become lighter when we use it to build connection, not just control. So it's so easy to judge ourselves based on numbers, especially in a world that measures success by income, your lifestyle, or spending habits. But your budget isn't a scoreboard. It's actually a mirror of your priorities. Self-determination theory reminds us that we thrive most when we feel a sense of autonomy and alignment. So when our actions reflect what we care about, for example, not just external standards. So if you're living on less right now, that doesn't make you less valuable. It doesn't. If you're budgeting to build freedom, that's something to be proud of, not hide. So your financial choices are allowed to reflect your season, your values, and your dreams, not pressure or comparison. And please remember, your worth isn't just the numbers, it's your integrity. Let your budget reflect what matters to you most. And for those of you who are Christians, someone of faith, ask God for wisdom and discernment to manage your money well and stick to a budget. If you're not, you might still find peace in simply creating space to just reflect. But honestly, sticking to a budget is hard, right? Ask the Lord for wisdom, pray, or reflect, right? And let peace lead the process. So if you're still watching, if you've ever struggled to stick to a budget, know this: it's not because you're lazy or bad with money or behind. It really isn't. Most of us never were really taught how to create money habits that work with our brain, not against it. Okay, those are all of my tips. I do have some financial well-being guides in the description box, so take a look, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.